You forgave them, genuinely. You meant it when you said it. But somewhere in the back of your mind, there's a file that never got deleted. Not because you're bitter, not because you're keeping score, but because your brain quietly decided that what happened mattered too much to erase. And most people will never understand the difference between holding a grudge and holding a memory. But you do. You live inside that difference every single day. And there's a reason this happens that goes much deeper than people think. Picture this: someone close to you lets you down. Maybe they lied about something small. Maybe they disappeared when you needed them. Maybe they said something during an argument that landed in a place they didn't even realize existed. You process it. You talk it through, or maybe you don't. Maybe you just decide inside yourself that it's done. You move forward. You laugh with them again. You love them again. But months later, maybe years later, something small happens. A tone of voice, a familiar phrase, a moment that echoes the original wound, and it all comes back. Not as rage, not as resentment, just as knowing. A quiet awareness that your body kept what your words released. And that's the part that confuses you. Because you did forgive, so why does your nervous system still remember? Here's what most people misunderstand. Forgiveness is a decision, but memory, especially emotional memory, is not. Your brain doesn't store painful experiences the same way it stores ordinary ones. When something hurts you deeply, your amygdala encodes that experience with a kind of emotional highlight. Psychologists sometimes call this emotional memory consolidation. It means the event gets stored not just as a fact, but as a feeling. The details sharpen, the context sticks, and no amount of conscious forgiveness can override that encoding, because it wasn't your thinking brain that stored it. It was your survival brain. And your survival brain doesn't care about closure. It cares about making sure it doesn't happen again. But that's only part of it. There's another layer most people miss. When you remember what someone did after you've already forgiven them, your brain isn't replaying the event to punish you. It's doing something far more sophisticated. It's pattern matching. Your mind is scanning new interactions for echoes of old ones, looking for early warning signs, subtle shifts in tone, small inconsistencies, anything that resembles the shape of what hurt you before. This isn't paranoia. This is your nervous system doing exactly what it was designed to do. It learned a lesson, and now it's applying it, quietly, automatically, without asking your permission. And this is where it gets more layered. People who forgive but never forget often carry a hidden emotional blueprint. They've usually experienced a moment, sometimes early in life, sometimes later, where trust was broken in a way that taught them something permanent. Not just that people can hurt you, but that you might not see it coming, and that second part is the one that stays. Because once your brain learns that danger can wear a familiar face, it stops fully relaxing around anyone, even people it loves. You don't stop trusting entirely, but you start trusting with conditions, with memory, with one eye open. The part that surprises most people is how invisible this is from the outside. You're not cold, you're not distant. You don't bring up old arguments or throw past mistakes in someone's face. In fact, most people who forgive but don't forget are some of the most composed, emotionally generous people in the room. They've just learned to carry the weight of what they remember without making it someone else's problem. They absorb, they adjust, they protect themselves internally while still showing up externally. And that takes more emotional effort than most people will ever realize. But there's a contradiction inside this that most people never talk about. The same memory that protects you can also isolate you. Because when you remember everything, when your brain keeps a quiet record of every inconsistency, every broken promise, every moment someone showed you who they really were, it becomes harder to let people all the way in. You give them 80%, 90%. But that last 10 stays locked behind a door that only you know exists. You're not cold. You're careful. And that carefulness was something you built, probably out of necessity, not preference. And that's exactly where this trait can quietly work against you if you're not aware of it. Because there's a difference between remembering as protection and remembering as a wall. When the memory starts running every relationship through a filter of past pain, when you catch yourself pulling away from someone who hasn't actually done anything wrong, just because they remind you of someone who did, That's when the remembering stops being useful and starts becoming a cage. The goal was never to forget, but the goal also isn't to let every old wound have veto power over every new connection. Here's what no one tells you about people who forgive, but never forget. They're not failing at forgiveness, they're doing something much harder. They're choosing to release someone from blame while still honoring what their own experience taught them. That's not a contradiction. That's emotional maturity holding hands with self-preservation. And it means you carry more than most people see. But it also means you understand people at a depth that most never reach. Your memory isn't your punishment. It's your proof that you paid attention when it mattered. Do you forgive quickly and remember forever, or does it take you just as long to forgive as it does to forget? And if this felt familiar, the next thing worth understanding is why some people go completely silent when they're hurt. Instead of saying a single word about it,